everyone. This is Jackie Cooper with CryptoMom2 Talk Show and the Blockchain Legal Institute. I want to thank everyone for hopping on this episode and remind you to definitely like and subscribe because there are some wonderful conversations that will be dropping soon. And I want you to always to be able to be in the loop on what's going on within our changing community. So for those that are new to CryptoMom2, I'll share a little bit about my background before I hop over to my guest, who I absolutely adore. She is a thought leader in this community and doing way too much on her plate. She, from mom to businesswoman. I'm an attorney and I'm also an educator in the special education space at the moment. And I'm also the CEO of the Blockchain Legal Institute, and the Blockchain Legal Institute is available to everyone as a centralized resource for the decentralized world that we live in. It has information on a variety of verticals, and it's for individuals, consumers, as well as businesses who are interested in finding out what laws are impacting you, as well as what's going on in our community. But today, it's not about the Blockchain Legal Institute. It's actually about this really fascinating report that was just released that is on one of the verticals that we talk about, which is Web3. And that whole area, is evolving, and so many individuals are stepping into it. And it's new, but it's not new. It's been around for a while, but there's so many new applications that are being explored in it. And that's why the creativity in the space is something I adore. So how are you doing today? I know that you have been doing so much and you are so tired, and I'm so appreciative of you being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I think whenever I get a chance to talk about the work and all that's going on in the community, that's always exciting and totally worth any time of the day. So I'm very happy to be here with you.
So, I know that you and I've talked about Bitcoin and our just experience in the community in general, but you are involved with a number of organizations, and that to me is very inspiring, because what you do is bring people together to make a difference in our community on a variety of levels. And it's not just in the Telegram groups or the Twitter chats or the events that we go to. You're actually creating associations and communities that people can have some very serious conversations about, in terms of how do we decide the laws that are impacting us, and how do we support the entrepreneurs that are in the community. There's so many different layers and levels to this. So where do you want to start? Because I know that you have a lot going on.
Yeah, I am an entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur by background, 20 plus years. Also did a stint as a management consultant for about 12 years, working up and down the West Coast, for the Googles and the Microsofts. But that led me to where I am today. And so today, my main priority is all around the U.S.Blockchain coalition. But as you said, I also do some entrepreneur in residence and accelerator work with various startups and VC communities. And so it's just going along with the tech community overall. With the U.S.Blockchain coalition, it was started by myself and Lee Bratcher out of the Texas Blockchain Council. He's awesome. He's my co-chair. And we started the U.S.Blockchain coalition back in May of 2021. I called him and I was a little bit maybe complaining, is this a Republican thing or a Democrat thing? It really shouldn't be a partisan thing, this technology. Why does it seem to be going that way? And what can we do about it? And that's when we realized this is the first time the states are talking to each other. This was Washington State and Texas. And we said, wait a minute. So literally 3 days later, we had about 10 states on a call. And then another few weeks later, we had 30 states on a call. And so obviously through action more than words, you could see that the states were really, really eager to just connect and get together and share notes. And that was kind of the premise of why we started the U.S.Blockchain Coalition. We're about 47 states now across the U.S., very close to being at 50. So
What were you missing?
I am missing Wisconsin. I am missing Delaware, and I am missing Alaska. Oh, and Indiana's on the brink right now. So Indiana and Alaska, TBD. Oh, and Nevada are TBD. But the big ones are Wisconsin, Indiana, and Delaware right now.
I'll keep my ears open. Since I'm based in Maryland, I'm going to have to join to kind of communicate what's going on in my backyard here.
Yes, absolutely. But there's a lot, going on. There are several states that are pretty loud and very vocal and good at the marketing game, which I think is good for many other states because it kind of, riles us up and gets us competitive and excited to, bring this technology to our own particular state. But without us coordinating it, we start to become competitive with each other in a bad way. And so
Yeah.
now we have this U.S. blockchain coalition where we have leader states like Texas, Florida, California, Washington, um, Virginia, that are kind of leading the pack, and then states that are a little bit more nascent and new to this arena and wanting to participate have other states to lean on in terms of resources, templates, best practices, talking points, legislative drafts, or even here in Washington, it's like, hey, can your Democrats over there talk to my Democrats over here, and just help us with the camaraderie. And so it's really made a difference over the past few years. And I mean, we're now in like year 2.5, so I'm counting 3. But it's when you look across the US, because I live in a corner of the US where we think, oh, everybody else is so crazy and they're red. But when you actually start to meet people, I mean, me coming from a very blue state, Washington, I'm meeting with folks from, I mean, I just talked to Kentucky today, and I talked to Alabama today, and I talked to Oklahoma today, for instance. And there's a lot more tying us together as people and as members and citizens of the United States than we realize, right? Like, we're not just red and blue and purple. We're actually all people that just want good things to happen to our family and friends. We want good jobs and access to good food and go on vacations and be able to provide our families good education. And we just, I mean, this is why we're all here. And so when you boil it down to that simple just need and goal, then there's actually, we're all united. It doesn't matter what perspective you're coming from. And that's kind of what we experience every day as the U.S. Blockchain Coalition, which is actually really great. And then with the U.S. Blockchain Coalition's State of Web3 report, we were trying to showcase, literally have the data speak for itself. So we tried to, refrain from putting in our own narratives or opinions or biases. We wanted the data to speak for itself. We had the data scientists actually make guesses at what the states were good at and what was going on in each state. And so it's completely data-led in terms of each battle card that's produced for each state. We went through and we we looked at startups, we looked at investments, we looked at VC capital, we looked at who were the incumbents that were participating in this technology. We looked at what does the federal funding look like, and so it really paints a different picture than what we think has been going on, right? It's not just Wyoming over here in Florida and Texas. There's actually a lot going on across the U.S. The media portrays this as a very dark, money laundering, scary thing. But when you look at the data, it shows like the Department of Defense, the National Science Foundation are some of the top biggest funders of contracts and grants and funding and research into the space. So, like, I don't think that's necessarily bad, right? And then when you look at the number of exits and the unicorns, the multi-$100 million businesses and or $1 trillion businesses that have come out of this space, especially over the small amount of time that it's existed, right? Less than 10 years. It's huge because there are no overnight successes, but when you look at how quickly companies are able to go from zero to something, IPO, get acquired, it's very, very impressive.
So have you seen certain trends based upon the information? I mean, is there a certain region that seems to be getting more support or is growing faster than other regions? And is there something that we can do to help different areas that might have a gap?
Yeah, we can go through, like, I can send anybody that's interested the full report. It's a full like 108 pages, so it's a monster report. And I don't think you want to go through each page one by one right here. But when you look at the report one by one, you can kind of see like what we think based on the data are the major factors that contribute to any state's overall propensity for good economic viability of this technology. And like for Washington State, you know, we're doing great on the VC front and the startup front and blah, blah, blah. But really on the academic front, we actually haven't paid enough attention to the universities and, you know, built that curriculum and seen enough white papers come out of the universities and the academic institutions here in Washington. So now, as a Washington State lead, I have a heat map of, you know, academic institutions that I can go and talk to. And, you know, I have a list of startups that have done really well that have exited or IPO that I can now make sure I've, you know, built relationship with. And, you know, I'm doing my part in highlighting their successes and, you know, putting them up as leaders for other startup entrepreneurs to look to in terms of mentoring or resources. And so kind of connecting the whole ecosystem and community. And so every state is a little bit different, but now we have the playbook basically. And what do we need to do next? Hey, now we have like talking points where we can go to the policymaker and be like, hey, looks like we have over 10,000 jobs in our state in this technology. And they're not all for blockchain engineers. There's, you know, customer support and marketing and legal and yada, 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 yada. And their, you know, pay ranges are from 60K to 300K. This is very meaningful work that will really impact our communities, right? Everyone wants a good job these days. We have jobs, but the pipeline of candidates into these jobs is a little bit scarce. So what can we do working with the economic institutions to kind of get these skills into people as they, you know, come into the job market, or maybe you can go and get retrained, you know.
Mhm.
We work very closely with the WTIA, which is the largest tech industry association in North America, and they have a big apprenticeship program. And so, like, you know, we're trying to work with them and, you know, getting education roundtables to highlight with other educational leaders saying, hey, did you know blockchain is really, really big? And it was one of the top sought after skills according to LinkedIn, but I think it was like 2019 or 2020. But you know, we haven't filled those jobs and we haven't filled those. So what can we do together? You know, do you need help building curriculum? Do you need what do you need resources? Do you need mentoring? Do you need speakers? Even, you know, there are plenty of people from the community willing to come in and teach for an hour. So it's, yeah, it's just connecting.
Connecting the dots, and also, like you said, it's showing where the data points are so people see the value in this as a business and as a profession, you know, for various career paths. I know being in the teaching field, I see the way curriculum is, and I see where there are gaps in terms of how we're teaching our youngsters about these potential career paths. So I mean, those are really, if we're developing a new pipeline, then we have to think about what skills do they need and what's traditional skills, even though, again, that word is really, I put it in quotes because anything blockchain is, everything applies everywhere. So, you know, again, what you're saying is so true. And sometimes people are not thinking about the long-term application, and then how it can rejuvenate neighborhoods and communities because of the business that can be brought there. So, so you're, I know that you are always about next steps. What do you think for those that are listening, what do you think their next steps might be, how they can support what's going on with this report, with, you know, the projects that you're talking about? How can they become activists within the community?
I think the best way is, like, as U.S.Blockchain Coalition, we really believe in the power of hyper local communities. And so as exciting as it may seem to join the DC fight and, you know, play the game in Washington, DC at the federal level, we strongly believe that the opportunities at the state level and in your own hyper-local communities. And so there's a quote, states are the best laboratories for democracy. It was done by Justice Brandeis. And at the end of the day, when you see all the friction happening at the federal level, it's actually by design. Like, we shouldn't be able to pass laws and policies willy-nilly, like year after year. It really should be a high friction process. And all of the iteration and the innovation should be at the state level. And so imagine a day when you can, you have a great policy idea that you want to pass at the federal level. You go, wait, let's try and pass it in 5 or 6 states, see, what words, highlights, lowlights, best practices, and then take the best to the federal level. And so that's sort of the process that we want to see happen more actively. And then to get involved with that is to reach out to your local state association, council, coalition, whatever their name is. If you can't find it, reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you to the state lead. If there isn't a state lead, like in Wisconsin, for instance, and you want to take on the flag in the name of the state, we're totally open to helping you get set up. We have a playbook and best practices and resources. So, happy to help any state stand one up if you're interested. But at the end of the day, it's reach out to your local communities. We're doing the busy and important work of connecting in the Facebook groups, the meetup groups, the Twitter spaces, all the different like small pockets of communities across every state, and then putting them together into one collaborative state around the state association, the state point of contact. And then that allows us to organize very quickly. If we need to respond to a letter or weird policy coming out of DC, we can all sign a letter and, call our representatives and senators on the phone, get our voices heard. And also, you don't want to be just building relationships when you need to. And so if you don't know who your state senator or representative is, find out who they are. There's a giant list and it's very accessible. If you don't know how to find it, let me know. I'm happy to email me, literally email me, and I will send you the links to figure out who your state senator and representative is. Send them a letter. Hey, I work in Web3. I'm not doing anything evil. I'm really interested in this technology because of blah. I think it's going to be really exciting for our communities. It solves a lot of problems. I would love to see a lot more educational content on it. Hey, there's all these job openings, but we are having trouble filling it. Like, whatever that message is, because at the end of the day, our policymakers are supposed to represent us. But if we are not in relationship and talking to our policymakers, then they're going off the people that are actually in contact with them, right? So don't miss out on that opportunity. Talk to their staff members. It doesn't matter if you're not talking directly to the senator, chief senator, the U.S. senator, right? You can talk to their staff members, and that's just as impactful. Getting the community voices heard really does make a difference.
I agree with you. I am all about, I talk to a lot of people about the importance of voting. I mean, even if you are not, you don't like the choice of candidates, it's still important to have a vote, to make your vote, because there are a lot of countries where you don't even have that ability. And and being part of this community to have the ability to say what's on our mind, I think is critical. So I'm going to be, for those that are listening on the audio side or those that are watching on the video side, I'm definitely going to have all the links embedded below, so that way you can get copies of the report, you can reach out to the coalition, you can learn more how to become active. And if you don't understand, ask questions. That's why we're here. We're here to help mentor, guide, and educate everyone, so that way the space is constantly changing. So what we think we know today, we're not going to know tomorrow, and we're going to have to educate ourselves again. So, again, just be part of the process and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, actually, what's great about the space, being a woman and middle-aged woman, mom, right? I think if you show real interest, like, the community is really, really open here and in being able to support you and making it very accessible. And so it may seem scary in terms of the technical content or the financial content, whatever it is. It's actually very accessible, and there are tons of really great people who are willing to take time out and help you.
Yeah, and there are publications that are family friendly, stories that have been written, as well as very tech side. So you can find something for everyone. Any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
Do you want me to share the report, or you
Yes,
want
please do. Yes. Yes. Let's see the report.
to? Okay.
We were on such a roll with conversation that
No worries. I'll try and keep it short and brief, but this is the executive summary version of the State of Web3. Oh, this is the actually final version. But as we go through it, you can kind of see, like, we listed out all the sponsors and underwriters of the report, and this is to win trust with the non-Web3 native community. So you can see, like, this is us, the U.S.Blockchain Coalition, the WTA, the largest tech industry association in North America. There are a lot of blockchain native organizations like Texas, California, Alabama, Virginia that have contributed to this report. And then we also have Providence Chain Network. They're actually one of the largest recipients of federal funding from the Department of Defense. People don't know that. So if you haven't checked them out, they have a really, really interesting story. The report is really, really big, but you can see that we break it out by region, and we kind of mirrored it against the CHIPS Act. There's a lot of funding and a lot of regional tech hubs that are being set up across the United States from the CHIPS Act. And so we mirrored the regional breakout according to that RFP that's out there. So it's sort of in line with what's going on across the US in terms of the tech sector. And then we have an executive summary section, which I can go over quickly. But there's some outliers in terms of states across the US that are doing some things interesting that we haven't been able to see before. So the most active, obviously, are California, New York, Florida, and Texas. New York and California actually have the largest overall industry and markets, right? Like, they have, New York is the epicenter of the financial markets globally. California having Silicon Valley and the whole VC sector there. There's a lot of activity in Texas and Georgia, but very few international investors. One thing you'll notice is that Web3 companies have a larger percentage of international investors than typical startups, especially at the various stages. And so that was something interesting that we learned through the data. These states, Alabama, South Carolina, Montana, have a lot of government investment, but not much else going on in terms of incumbents or startups or other things. So, that's kind of interesting. High per capita investment: Nevada, Delaware, New Jersey, Wyoming, Utah. They are not epicenters of various markets necessarily, but they have a lot going on in them. Delaware, we think it's because most C corporations are incorporated out of Delaware, and so maybe there's a lot more going in Delaware because of that.
Yeah.
And same thing with Wyoming. They passed a lot of legislation to try and make it easier for companies to incorporate out of Wyoming with their different LLCs and the DAO legislation. But we haven't been able to prove that quite yet. And then Tennessee, a lot of activity for the healthcare slice, Nevada for gaming, and Maryland for government, your state.
Yeah, interesting.
So another thing that we found that was really interesting is there's a lot of hype, and there's been a lot of talk about startups and various protocols, but really at the end of the day, the growing number of investments coming in year over year is actually coming from the enterprise side. And Washington State, Seattle, we're the home of a lot of enterprises. I've been knocking on doors left and right for years, getting the enterprises to come out and talk and share about their use cases, but they're extremely competitive, and they don't really want to come out with the public, to the public, about what's really going on. And they've only just started doing that, right? Like T-Mobile this year has been very vocal about wanting to be a big participant and a big foundational player in the space of Web3. But and more, I think enterprises will as we go forward. But in terms of hiring, in terms of resources and funding and M&A, they've actually been driving a lot more of the activity than we realized. So, we also looked at, like, what are they, putting their money towards smart contracts, supply chains, health, and cybersecurity. And so we see the breakout. There's obviously like blips in the hype cycle. So 2017 hype cycle, there's a big blip. And then 2021, there's the big hype cycle around NFTs. And so there's blips in terms of Web3 startups being founded in those years. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is interesting because it also, goes back to what the media covers. And, what you're showing is that there is like this underground movement that the media is not talking about.
No, they're talking about what's easy. If you want to get the actual data, it takes quite a bit of digging, unfortunately. And it's not just Google. You can't just Google it to find out what's really going on. So we estimate over 200,000 jobs nationally have been employed in the realm of Web3. Some of them by large incumbent companies, but a great number of them, greater than 75%, are coming from less than 100, even more than less than 50 employees companies. So small businesses, as per usual, are leading the pack in terms of employment and job opportunities across the U.S., with a great number of them obviously coming from California and New York, but they are there across the United States. And that's what policymakers care about, jobs. Oh, we hope that's what they care about, right?
Well, if it's to help the economy, which is, to help the cycle of where the money's coming, where it's going, and to put it back into the community, yes, you would hope that that would be what they're looking at, especially if we want to invest in our backyard and we want to have the jobs stay here. Yes.
Right. So in terms of Web3 companies and their investors, over 29% of the investors are outside of the US, from the outside of the US, an even number between Asia and Europe, and another, 5% from other areas like Brazil or Canada. So I think this is something that we want to highlight because this is a topic top of mind for a lot of different communities across the US. I think it's a topic of mind for like the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense too these days. And so just be aware, whenever you're participating as an advisor, investor, employee with any particular Web3 startup, to be aware of like, where's the money coming from? Because that really does drive a lot of the decision making and prioritization that happens in any company. Just want to know where the money's coming from. And then California and New York lead as expected, but Florida and Texas are actually up there in terms of the list of, this is the count of startups by state. So California and New York, but close in third and fourth place is Florida and Texas. And then billions of dollars that invested by VC, by state, by venture capitalist or investor. California, New York at the top, and again Florida, and now New Jersey. I thought that was really interesting.
That is.
Another thing that's pretty interesting that you can see in this, I think I got a mosquito bite. On this chart is that Wyoming is nowhere in the top 10. They're probably in like the top 15, I'm sure, but they're not in the top 10. And it's probably because they have a smaller footprint in terms of overall economic activity and impact. And, California and New York, just the number of dollars and billions of dollars being earned there or invested there or transacted there, it's really hard to compete with. Incumbent involvement is growing. We've seen a lot of them come out. Even like BlackRock is, getting more involved. We have JP Morgan, Chase, Fox, Cigna, Overstock. They were one of the first to receive payments via crypto. I think their former CEO was also really big in building out a security token sort of exchange technology as well. And these are the sectors that they are investing in, right? Obviously finance and technology, but there's retail, healthcare, food, business, transportation, media, hotel, energy. There's more and more coming out. When you look across the globe in terms of governments putting in money into the space, the US is actually very, very low in terms of the ranking. But then when you look at just, looking at the US bubble, the funding has actually been going up significantly over time. I thought like the federal funding would be going more into workforce development year over year, but actually it's going more and more into Web3 use cases. I thought this was fascinating because, I thought workforce development would be more, more the top of mind focus in terms of grants and contracts, but it's really Web3 use cases.
Do you think
And
that because of the online nature of applying some of the tech to multiple businesses, so you actually need less people, maybe?
maybe, I don't know. I mean, we have the full, in the detail, you can see some of the examples of what the federal government is funding or, contracting out for by state. And I can show you an example of that shortly here. We also documented the methodology. And so the purpose of that was we focused the attention of this report to someone that's not native to this space. And so we assumed that whoever was going to be looking at this report was going to be skeptical, not, a advocate of this space, but more of a, I don't know, like, or not even aware of the space. And so we wanted to document the methodology. How did we do our methods? How did we define Web3? What are the definitions of each of these terms? We did not include metaverse because games like World of Warcraft or Sims is actually included in the definition of metaverse these days. And so we're not going to include all of that extra scope. And so this is how we scoped it in terms of the how we define the state of Web3.
That's very broad.
It's very broad, and blockchain, DLT, NFT, DeFi, crypto, digital asset, verifiable credentials, decentralized identity, stable coins, self-sovereign identity, tokenomics. I mean, we were doing a big search on the description, the company name, the whatever we could find on the various websites through the crawlers, and also through Crunchbase and PitchBook and all of the grant applications to figure out, and tag a company as Web3 or not Web3. We found over 6,500 companies across the US to be tagged based on this definition and this scope, which I thought was like pretty big. And so we're building out a use case catalog, going through and doing due diligence on each of these 6,500 companies right now. And so always looking for funders and sponsors. So if you're interested in, accelerating that work, because it's a lot of work, please let me know. Yeah, so here again, we also, try to document like the scope of this report. So this is what was included, but there were things that were not included, right? Like if you're talking about investors, we talked about disclosed investments. So anything that was like private investment done off the books, not, the Form D, not going to be captured by PitchBook or Crunchbase. We don't have that investment in our report. And then we want to do a second report. So, this is the state of Web3, but we want to do like a double click on some of these topics. And so there are some ideas that we are percolating right now and looking for more underwriters for. So one idea is like, hey, wouldn't it be great to like get a timeline of all the policies that have passed across the United States, state by state, and then look at the economic activity related to that. Does public policy help drive economic activity to a state and investors, or does it not? Like that's the hypothesis that many of us are running on. And if we do something at the federal level, will more, investors and entrepreneurs come to the United States versus like Switzerland or Singapore or not? So we're trying to, look at the data to see like what has really happened and what is likely to happen based on the data of previous years. But that's phase 2. And if you're interested in learning more, always looking for more people to participate. And then, like I said, we broke it out by region based on the U.S. Economic Development Agency. They were the ones that released the CHIPS Act and are named in that. And so here's the breakout of the U.S. across the U.S. We also included Puerto Rico in this one. But, going forward, we may or may not include more of the territories. Now I'm, onboarding the U.S. Virgin Islands and there's so many of them. I can't remember their names right now. So let's see. You're Maryland. So let's go to Maryland, and I can show you a example of the battle card. So Maryland, right?
Yeah.
The state is leading in the commercialization of government investment in Web3. Again, reminding you that the data scientists wrote this, not me, not any, native blockchain person. They did it based on what they saw in the data, which I thought was really nice. The ecosystem, lots of government activity, but maybe could get, do more to attract investors and startups and, get the incumbents more active, and definitely on the academic side. But, with the companies that are receiving funding in Web3, you got 20 companies that have been identified. The top VC recipients are SIC Currency, Bolt Labs, Index Co-op, and Americana Technologies. And most of them are in the Baltimore area. And so, maybe this might be a heat map for yourself, founders to interview and learn more about.
Yeah.
Um,
Great idea. And
of the
Baltimore
60
very close to
company,
me.
sorry.
It's okay.
Of the 60 companies identified, 50 of them are startups and have received over $100 million in investment. So, very well capitalized. One company has already had an IPO and 3 were acquired. Like I mentioned, this is really fast tracking in terms of exits for a startup company, especially in a new technology. So interesting. 6 companies are headquartered in Maryland that have significant Web3 investments. So Lockheed Martin, Sienna, Marriott, McCormick, Under Armour, and T. Rowe Price.
Yeah.
So maybe again, these are, maybe another heat map of, folks to find in these companies to figure out, what are they doing and would they be willing to share? Because we need more enterprises to share and lead in the narratives and the telling of the stories and use cases. And then in terms of government funding and grants, we listed at a high level what they were funding: supply chain security, automation through blockchain, data integrity and provenance, secure and resilient systems, quantum safe blockchain solutions, secure communications, blockchain for secure and efficient resource scheduling. Kind of gives you a sense of what is very important in the state. There's we tag the active universities that are releasing white papers or research in this area. And then let's see, additional activities. So we found over 60 job postings, and we listed the companies that are hiring, and the salary range is $60,000 to $180,000. So, there's some good activity going on in Maryland.
Yeah, it's solid.
And for larger states, it looks like Maryland's been tagged as a larger state. We have a page 2 of a battle card. And so this gives you more of a sampling of what's going on in terms of jobs. So these are, a sampling of the companies that are hiring in Maryland, specifically Deloitte, General Dynamics, Coinbase, IBM, number of employees in that company, where is their HQ, what is the sector, and then what are the positions that they're hiring for in Maryland, right? Developer 101K to 129K, or a cyber virtual currency analyst, or a backend engineering manager, a procurement professional. And then there's also more breakdown of what is the federal funding going to. So for Oratech, they received a contract to integrate microservices via DLT in the federal space, enabling the creation of a scalable business network with leverage on microservice architecture.
Amazing.
So you can kind of see
yeah. I said that was just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you haven't had a chance, we have this for every single state, including Puerto Rico and District of Columbia across the US. Check it out, and if there's anything that we got wrong, definitely let us know. If you have ideas of what more data you'd like to see or you think would be more helpful to all of us working in the trenches and trying to educate and advocate, please let us know, because yeah, we're here to help and support.
That was a huge amount of work. How long did it take for you to do? I know when we talked, you said it was coming, and when did it start? How long? Because that's massive.
Well, fundraising was most of last year. So June through December, just getting the funding secured was a big deal. And then also vendor selection, figuring out which vendor to work with. We ended up working with a research team, data analyst research team. They were former Booz Allen Hamilton folks. So pretty smart. They have access to all of the government data and the small business administration data. And so, we worked with them. They're called Moonbeam. Funny name, I know, because a lot of people are giving me commentary on it, but they're legit. They're really good, great group of people. And then we kicked off the report in January but it took a long time to just get the methodology and lay out the framework and normalize the data, because data definitions in one database does not mean it's the same thing in another database. So just getting the data to be normalized across different data sets was a lot of work, and figuring out the definitions and the scope. So basically January till we really sit in the end of July. Good like 7 months of work.
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge. I definitely, applaud what you're doing in terms of quality information in the space, so that way it can guide the leaders and those that are coming forward to help, with the development of business here in our country. So I definitely am excited to see the second layer of the report. I definitely will offer to help in any way, because I think this is
Thank you.
important. And, again, I definitely believe in what you are doing. So now, any last minute thoughts?
No, I think if I rambled too much, I'm sorry, but hopefully it's helpful and interesting to folks. And I'm always here to be a resource. So if anybody wants to reach out or connect, you can find me at blockcoalition.org, or email me, or tweet at me. I'm pretty responsive.
Yes, you are. You're very responsive for all the questions and answers that you provide. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to be able to share this out with my network and to let people know about the information so they can digest it, think about it, figure out how to use the information to support the communities, and like you said, become active, because we all need to be foot soldiers in this. We all need to be participants. So so for everyone who's listening, as I always say at the end of all my shows, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're so interconnected, and now more than ever. So thank you and have a great day. Bye, guys.